Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is anti-Semitism, specifically anti-Semitic speakers invited to speak at public universities on campus. City University of New York, alma mater to some of the greatest minds to have blessed America, many of them Jewish minds, was entangled in a maelstrom of controversy. This renowned and respected institution, a great hall of learning with a long and wonderful history of aiding Jews and other immigrants, invited a renowned BDS supporter to deliver the commencement address to the graduation ceremony of their public health division. The speaker is a well-known, outspoken anti-Israel organizer. She's an unapologetic anti-Semite. I will not mention her name. I will not be party to lending her more publicity. Because of the invitation and the reaction elicited by it, her web presence and notoriety have increased exponentially. Many members of the established Jewish leadership called on CUNY to cancel her presentation. They failed. They argued that the speaker represented hatred and anti-Semitism, that these ideas were not, should not be presented at City College at any time, and certainly not during a graduation ceremony, traditionally a time when esteemed speakers offer advice and outline a vision for graduates. The issue spiraled into one of freedom of speech. On that level, Israel and the Jewish establishment had no ground to stand on. Once invited, she was going to speak. Beseeching the university, the city, and the state to uninvite her was doomed, as it did, to fail. This person advocates for BDS and organizes people to boycott, divest, and institute sanctions against Israel. She works hard to pressure corporations and entertainers to stop supporting Israel. In earlier public presentations, she put forth the argument that, quote, one cannot simultaneously be a feminist and pro-Israel, unquote. Unfortunately, advocating against Israel does not violate the law. Her speech is protected, and she is protected, even if she's wrong. Unfortunately, this woman does not stand alone. Speakers who believe and perpetrate this hatred will continue to receive invitations and stand behind podiums spewing hatred and lies. But we need not stand by and let it happen. There are three viable approaches we, as lovers and supporters and defenders of Israel, can take when confronted by similar situations. First, be proactive and get involved. Assume roles as members of the planning or speaking committees in organizations or universities in which we are involved. Make certain that no name on the list of potential speakers is hateful in any way, not just Jew or Israel hatred, any hate. Prevent these speakers from being invited in the first place. Second, raise our voices and articulate our concerns loudly, politely, respectfully, and collectively. When we see injustice, legally and peacefully protest against that injustice. In this case, the protest against the speaker was so small and the counter-protest in her favor was so much larger that if nothing else, the numbers were on her side. Third, familiarize ourselves with the lives and words of the questionable presenters. Use their own words and actions to discredit them. Use their words to not merely express our displeasure with them, but as proof that they incite violence. Inciting violence is illegal. Anyone who has ever been involved in that form of incitement should not be given an invitation to stand behind another bully pulpit. CUNY was derelict in their duties, and the administration of a public university sponsored by the state and local government cannot legally permit or provide a platform to a speaker who advocates violence. This is one of the limits of the constitutionally protected right to freedom of speech. That is where freedom of speech stops. Few extremists, especially anti-Israel extremist speakers, are without a huge library of written and taped materials. Almost all have advocated violence in some way at some time. This speaker is no exception. She's on the record advocating that young Palestinians throw rocks at Israeli soldiers. The evidence should have been enough to stop the speaker and exchange her for another. If the university would not rescind the invitation, a court should have. There is no justification for speech that advocates violence. CUNY failed in their duty to their graduates when they issued the invitation. The Jewish community failed in our duty as guardians of Israel by mounting a poorly planned and executed protest. Moving on, The United States is finally arming the Kurds of Syria in a systematic and official way. It's about time. Finally, the Kurds are being armed with serious, sophisticated, and heavy weapons that will enable them to confront the artillery and tanks of ISIS. Kurds are the only group on the ground with the motivation to confront and defeat ISIS. They have the battle experience, but the United States never gave them more than light weapons to confront ISIS. And that was simply foolish. No matter how strong your motivation is to succeed, pistols and machine guns are no match against tanks and heavy artillery. Not everyone thinks this is a good idea. The Turks and the Kurds have been engaged in a long-term battle. Turkey is not happy with the actions of the United States, and U.S. leaders and diplomats will have to deal with that. The United States needs to give Turkey assurances that the weapons given to the Kurds to fight ISIS will not be used to attack them. Colonel Ryan Dillon is the new U.S. spokesman for Operation Inherent Resolve. Dillon replaced Colonel John Dorian. Operation Inherent Resolve is the name of the multinational coalition organized by the United States. Colonel Dillon has said that they have already reassured Turkey and already received assurances from the Kurds that the United States weapons would only be used against ISIS. According to the New York Times, Dillon said, quote, "Whenever possible, our advisors will monitor the use of weapons and supplies we give the Kurdish elements of the SDF, ensuring use only against ISIS," unquote. He added, "Any alleged misuse or diversion of U.S. support will be taken seriously and lead to the possible curtailment of support if verified." That's not enough for Turkey. The Turks are arguing that, in their eyes, the Kurds are terrorists. For decades, the Kurds have been chipping away at Turkey trying to fight for an independent state. Turkey's point is, in essence, that you do not fight one terrorist group by arming another terrorist group. Turkey has a point, but that point conflicts with U.S. interests. The United States is reluctant to allocate soldiers, American boots on the ground, to fight in the region. One of the arguments often used by ISIS and al-Qaeda is that the United States is already too involved in Arabic and Muslim life. The perception is that having U.S. forces on the ground will serve the public relations needs of ISIS and al-Qaeda and inspire more recruits to sign up and fight the American infidels. That boomerang effect is not a chance anyone wants to take. Other than properly arming the Kurds, there aren't too many other options for fighting terrorist extremism in Syria and Iraq. Most local regional forces have failed miserably in that quest. Even after receiving U.S. training, most local troops and units are plain and simple, and rightfully so, afraid for their lives. They were afraid that if captured by the ISIS, they will not only be tortured or killed, it will be death by decapitation. And we have the videos to corroborate that fear. Instead, locals blend in and take their chances. They often run away. 2 years ago, when ISIS advanced on the Iraqi city of Mosul, they came with only 800 fighters. Already present in Mosul were a total of 35,000 police and soldiers. Mosul is the second largest city in Iraq and was home to 2 million people. 800 versus 35,000. And what happened? When ISIS fighters approached Mosul, all 35,000 police ran away. All of them. Many stripped to their underwear to show that they were unarmed, and they ran away. They left not only their clothes, but also their heavy and light weapons given to them by the United States, including tanks, Hummers, anti-aircraft guns, heavy artillery, and ammo. The Kurds do not have the luxury of flight. The Kurds cannot run away and cannot blend in. They are different, and no one wants them. No country will take them in. Kurds live only amongst themselves. The one choice they have is to fight. It is a basic rule of thumb for the Kurds. Even without the help of the United States, they must fight because it is a fight for their lives, for their very existence. Over the years, the United States has made promises to the Kurds. Most of the time, those promises have not been fulfilled. Over time, Kurds lost their faith in the empty U.S. pledges of help and assistance. But this time, it's different. This time, it's in the best interest of the United States for the Kurds to be well armed. The United States is committed to destroying ISIS and providing better weapons to the only group in the region that is willing to fight ISIS, and is the only way to fulfill that commitment. Now let's talk about gifts. Everyone loves gifts. Some people love giving more than getting. Some prefer getting to giving. In some areas of the world, gift giving is a cultural imperative. Over the course of his maiden presidential trip, President Trump and his wife, First Lady, like all other predecessors, were showered with presents. Countless hours were dedicated to selecting the gifts given to Donald and Melania Trump. Teams of assistants in host countries sought out advice. There were meetings and evaluations and arguments over which gifts were appropriate for the visiting top U.S. dignitaries and worthy of being bestowed upon them by their presenters. Host bestows gifts that they feel best represent the message they want to convey to the American president, to his advisors, and by extension to the American people. Each gift tells a story. Each gift conveys a message. Each gift becomes part of history. Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres gave U.S. President Gerald Ford a priceless, pristine Roman wine decanter. It was from the 1st century, from the time of Jesus, and from the land of Jesus. It was not only a symbol of history, it was a priceless piece of history. In 1978, during the Camp David signing accords of the Camp David, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin presented U.S. President Jimmy Carter with a one-of-a-kind paper cut of Jerusalem. Egyptian President Anwar Sadat gave the United States President a saddle. Both gifts were steeped in meaning. A short while later, as a result of the signing of the accords, these two Middle Eastern leaders were presented with the Nobel Peace Prize. But there's a catch. In the end, the carefully chosen, ceremoniously presented gifts do not actually belong to the President or First Lady or Secretary of State or any other U.S. elected official. They are not theirs. All presents belong to the U.S. government. The President and the First Lady receive the gifts on behalf of the American people. According to U.S. law, an elected official, especially a U.S. president, cannot accept presents. These gifts would be considered bribes, and if he kept them, the president would be violating the Constitution, as well as the Foreign Gifts and Declarations Act of 1965. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 of the Constitution clearly says that it's against the law. It's called the Emoluments Clause. Emoluments are any gain, profit, or salary. The quote is, "No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state." The 1965 Gifts Act further explains that the reason the president accepts these gifts is because refusal may cause, quote, offense or embarrassment, unquote. Before the Gifts Act was enacted, First Lady Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy received a horse from Ayub Khan, the governor of Pakistan. It was 1962, and Khan had established very good relations with JFK. During his first visit to the White House, Khan discovered that he and Jackie had a mutual love of horses, and that the First Lady had even participated in competitions while at Georgetown. That's when the governor of Pakistan presented the First Lady with a black horse named Sardar, which she renamed Blackjack. Despite his allergy to horses, JFK encouraged Jackie to keep and ride the horse. In her biography, Jackie Kennedy wrote how comforting the horse was to her in the aftermath of her husband's assassination. Nowadays, every president accumulates thousands of gifts during their presidency. Each one is recorded, described, documented, and brought to the National Archives. After the president leaves office and builds a presidential library, the items are shipped over and remain on display there. Now, let's say that the president or the First Lady likes a particular gift. That doesn't mean, to the chagrin of many, an elected official, that they can take it with them. They can, however, make a request to purchase the item for its market value. On their first trip abroad as First Lady, Melania Trump received a gift I think she will want to keep. Nechama Rivlin, the First Lady of Israel, presented Melania Trump with a gift to share with her 11-year-old son, Baron. It was a book entitled Hug by David Grossman. Nechama suggested that Melania and Baron read the book together. Actually, Melania was given 3 copies of the book, one in English, one in Hebrew, and one in Arabic. Grossman is an award-winning, internationally acclaimed author, known as a powerful, biting writer of serious literature. His children's books are more sentimental and poignant. The book is called Hug. Its theme is that everyone, especially every child, is unique in their own special way. It is Nechama's way of trying to help Baron deal with a very difficult role of being the son of a sitting president. Hug has a very, very, very little monetary value. and would fall under the exceptions to the gifts rule, especially if read by the First Lady and their son. As small as the monetary value, that's how large it is in sentimental value. The First Lady of Israel, now a grandmother, was thinking like a mother lioness and lending sage advice to the much younger Melania. The exchange was truly touching. Coming up next, points of view. Here's what some important voices have been talking about. We're going to discuss one column today. The column is by Moshe Ahrens. It was published in Haaretz on May 29, 2017, in both the Hebrew and English editions. Ahrens is a former Israeli defense minister 3 different times for a total of 4 years, and was foreign minister for 3 years. He was a major leader of the Likud party. He's a true gentleman. Born in Lithuania in 1925, he and his family immigrated to the United States, to New York City in 1939. And he becomes an active member of Beitar in the United States. Moved to Israel in 1949, and then comes back and forth, which included a degree from MIT and Caltech. This column is entitled, "What Makes Arab Leaders Pragmatic?" This is not a question, but a statement, and it is a serious explanation of Arab leaders' way of analyzing issues and making decisions. This is how Ahrens begins. Who are these pragmatic Arab rulers? Who have aroused such great expectations in recent months? In forging a united front against terrorism, in assisting in the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they can be recognized by a moderation of their past hostility toward Israel. Ahrens suggests that these Arab leaders, the pragmatic ones, are the ones who see their struggle against radical Islam and terror hand in hand with the way Israel sees the struggle against terror. He continues, they were listening attentively to the simultaneous translation of US President Donald Trump's address in Riyadh last week, in which he called on them to form a united front against terrorism and rid themselves of the terrorists in their midst. They are autocratic or dictatorial rulers concerned with dangers to their survival in the face of growing Iranian influence in terrorism, much of it promoted or aided by the Islamic Republic. Ahrens is not starry-eyed about Arab leaders, but he also knows they want Israel's help. And of course, they can help Israel too. He writes, when your survival is threatened, it seems to concentrate the mind. Their support for Palestinian cause tends to take a back seat to those measures that need to be taken to assure their survival, which includes a search for potential allies. Israel, also threatened by Iran and an expert in fighting terrorism, is seen as such an ally. Ahrens says that Arab support of the Palestinian causes are low priority when compared to their very survival and maintaining their hold and control their power. Ahrens now asks if the leaders are more moderate than pragmatic. A good question, but less relevant. He asks, does this make these rulers more pragmatic or more moderate? Not really. They are simply giving their most immediate interest, their survival, precedence. How about the pragmatic Arab rulers assisting in resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Sounds good at first sight, but not very likely. They seem to agree with Trump, calling Hezbollah and Hamas terrorist organizations. Both organizations claim they are fighting for the Palestinian cause. Asking the Palestinians to rid themselves of the terrorists in their midst is almost like asking them to rid themselves of themselves. Moshe Ahrens makes it very clear that there are many Palestinian terrorists as well as those who are more pragmatic, like Abbas. Ahrens writes, there are Palestinians like Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas who have come to realize that Palestinian terrorism has only damaged the Palestinian cause, and that it was the wave of terrorism during the Second Intifada, which killed over 1,000 Israeli civilians, that brought Israeli military rule into the West Bank. Ahrens' conclusion is the most important part of the essay. He says these leaders must reject terror. That includes PA leaders. One cannot be pragmatic and at the same time embrace terror. Maybe the other Arab leaders will influence Abbas to join their point of view. He concludes, but the rejection of terrorism has yet to become part of the education of young Palestinians. Abbas has not managed to do that. He seems incapable of becoming a partner in the war against terrorism. And it is difficult to believe that the pragmatic Arab rulers can get him to join a coalition against terrorism. This is an excellent essay. Ahrens is 91 years old, and he still has a keen eye. This essay reminds me of the many great pleasures I had speaking with and bantering with him about these ideas. Next up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. Let's talk about 4 cartoons today, from all over the world. There's no theme connecting any of the cartoons, just political humor. The first cartoon is from Jordan, and it's called The Werewolf of London is Back. It was published June 4th, 2017, by Osama Hajjaj. The point is obvious. The Werewolf of London is a terror, and it's stalking London. The second cartoon is called Peace, and it's by Marian Kamensky. It was published in Austria on May 21st, 2017. It's about the re-election of the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. There's a huge mass of people in Iran, and Rouhani is speaking to them while they're holding Iranian flags and waving them. In the foreground, clearly larger than anything else, is the image of the Grand Ayatollah. Rouhani is actually standing inside his beard, just under his mouth. The cartoon is saying, there really is no free election. The Ayatollah is the guy in charge. This third cartoon is entitled Trump in Saudi Arabia, and it was published in the International New York Times on May 29th, 2017. The cartoonist is Patrick Chapati. The cartoon has President Trump, daughter Ivanka, and son-in-law Jared walking into the Saudi royals, and they are announced as the Trump royal family. It is very funny. The cartoon is making a play on real royalty. This last cartoon is about terror, or rather terrorists and their supposed reward for murdering innocent people. It's more of a comment than it is a humorous piece. The cartoonist is Arnon Van Dam, and the cartoon is called Paradise. It was published May 30th, 2017. In a cloud is a heavenly gatekeeper. Approaching the cloud is a suicide terrorist. The gatekeeper says to the terrorist, who is expecting great reward, "Paradise? The world of the living is the only paradise. You just left it by blowing yourself to pieces." No further commentary is needed here. In a moment, my own perspective and a few predictions. ISIS has been calling for vehicle attacks for several years. They're not alone. Terrorist leaders across the globe, especially in Gaza, the West Bank, have called for using vehicles as a weapon for a long time. Even imams preach about the use of cars, trucks, knives to attack innocent people. With Ramadan, ISIS has picked up their messaging. ISIS has posted videos and other messages, including poster-sized messages, posted across the internet, imploring people to kill the citizens of the Crusaders. The message, written in black, also reads, quote, "Run over them with vehicles," unquote. It's written in yellow. In parentheses there, they added, "gain benefit from Ramadan." Under the slogan, there's pictures of a gun, a knife, and a truck, with the English words written in red next to each of them. At the very bottom of the poster is the translation of all the slogans into Arabic. ISIS is calling for more terror. Take them at their word and expect more, especially in Western Europe. Another act of anti-Semitism, this time in the quiet suburb of Pittsburgh. Pine cones spell out the words, "Kill the Jews," and then ended with a swastika for emphasis. This hateful message was laid out on the retaining wall at a school crosswalk for everyone to see in the beautiful, picturesque, affluent Pittsburgh suburb of Mount Lebanon. It was not the first or second incident of this nature in that neighborhood. A few months ago, the girls' bathroom in a local high school there was defaced with a similar graffiti message and the swastika. And the same thing happened at a local playground. The corner on which the pine cones were arranged is a popular spot for messages. The school crossing officer often arranges pleasant messages for the children going to school. "Have a nice day" is the most common message, not one of hate. The house on the corner is up for sale. For now, no one is living there. The message was discovered at 6:30 a.m. After snapping a picture and calling the police, someone transformed the word "kill" to "love." This anti-Semitic sentiment is certainly not shared by everyone in the neighborhood. The vast majority of residents do not in any way subscribe to it. The problem is that some hateful person or group of teens in Mount Lebanon is scrawling messages of hate for all to see. The culprit or culprits need to be apprehended and punished. An anti-terror YouTube video has gone viral. This is the first time anything like this has happened. The 3-minute and 11-second video was made by the Kuwaiti telecom company named Zain. In just 2 days, 2.4 million people have watched the video. Zain, a telecommunication company, is actually a regional mobile operator with more than 45 million customers. Through the voice of a young girl, the video proclaims, quote, "You've filled the cemeteries with our children and emptied our school desks," unquote. The video is an ad that takes a stand against terror. The song sung in the video contains the following lines: "Worship your God with love not terror, and be tender in your faith, gentle, not harsh. Confront your enemy with peace, not war." This video depicts victims of terror. It implores a terrorist who made a suicide bomber belt, which he wears throughout the video, to stop the murder and embrace a different understanding of Islam. This video ad is very impressive. So is the response it has received. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one picante piece of information. Did you know we've been speaking a lot about peace? And the concept of peace is all over the news with regard to the Middle East, Israelis, Arabs, and their leaders. People will have high hopes for peace. The word in English comes from the Latin pax. It actually does not mean what we think it means. In Latin, it means an agreement. Until the modern era, peace meant an absence of violence or war, hostility or aggression. Today, it means more than the ceasing of fire. It means an agreement whereby the parties work together, not simply a status of non-war and non-belligerence. In Hebrew, the word is shalom. Almost everyone knows that. But the word shalom does not mean peace either. It means complete or total. It means at one with. The principle of shalom is that it is a complete status where there is no fear and people are one and totally fulfilled. That is why one wishes someone shalom when they depart and when they arrive, wishing them total fulfillment. And that is why the standard greeting in Hebrew is to inquire about one's status with the word shalom, ma shlomcha. The same is the case in Arabic with salam, ma salama. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.